Well, hello everyone. Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Joseph Getz, and I come to you by way of Carthage, Illinois, working for the Carthage System Professional Swine Management. I've been there just a little over 6 years at Carthage. I've held a few different roles within the accounting team, but currently find myself in the corporate controller position, overseeing the finance side of things for our corporate entities, but also have some responsibilities on the production and farm accounting side of things as well, which each one of our farms is a separate legal entity, separate LLC, so we do the accounting side for each one of those entities and have report outs to our individual shareholders and the like. So I'll start off by kind of telling you a little bit about who we are at the Carthage System and kind of what we do on a daily basis, and then how that affects some of the accounting side of things, and then specifically how we are utilizing FBS on the day-to-day accounting, and then some of the reporting pieces that we have to our shareholder and investor groups. As well. We utilize FBS exclusively for our accounting system on the production side of things, and like I said earlier, each one of them is a separate legal entity, so lots of different pieces of finance, lots of different sets of books there to kind of make our daily accounting move within the FBS realm. So kind of who we are at the Carthage System. So we operate under the entity called Professional Swine Management LLC, and that is the management consulting company that oversees the production at the individual farm level. So that's farm operations, the day-to-day management of the employees that have their hands in production and making the animals. And then have a nutrition team as well that are formulating diets and feed strategy for the animals at the farm level. We also have an HR group who does the recruiting, the training, and the like. In recent years, they've become very well versed in the TN recruiting side of the business, so going and getting labor from other countries and the like to staff our farms. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we do the accounting side of things for each one of our farm entities, and kind of right along with that, do some data analysis work as well for the farms. And then some of the other areas of our business as well. We have a PhD environmentalist on staff who works on all the environmental related pieces with the farms, and then we also have maintenance and filtration teams that specialize in these different hog facilities and the maintenance of them, particularly on the filtration side of things. Biosecurity being such an important part of our industry, we've developed some individuals specifically within that maintenance and filtration space that kind of specialize and have a deep understanding of the different pieces of equipment on the filtration side of things, and then also logistics work as well. So making sure an animal gets from point A to point B in some of the most efficient pieces possible, and certain farmer needs a certain number of head at these pieces, and different barns fill at different times, so all the logistics work wrapped up in getting those animals where they need to be as efficiently as possible. So a lot of different operations under the PSM realm, but specifically I'll be kind of talking to you about the accounting side of things. So kind of beyond, by the numbers here, kind of who we are at the Carthage System. So to give you kind of an idea of the scale that we're operating with, you see up there we've got 180,000 sows that produce about 4.6 million pigs weaned a year, and we also have 500,000 finishing spaces as well. So, pretty big scale, pretty big size, and like I say, we're doing the accounting work for most of those animals that you'll see up there. So, kind of within our accounting structure piece, I'll kind of lift the hood and tell you a little bit about what we're doing on a daily basis there. So we're doing full accounting processes. So some of that's the day-to-day accounting processes, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll for the farm staff. but then also financial reporting. So, financial statement prep, and then our financial reporting packages, and, are sent out monthly to each of our individual farm shareholders. And then quarterly, each of our farms has a quarterly board meeting in which the, financial reporting packet is presented, much like a publicly traded company would have, do an earnings release and discuss the financial results. Each of our farms has one of those on a quarterly basis as well. And so kind of with that, then it's, cash flow planning strategy of, okay, where are we at today from a cash position standpoint, but also projecting forward of cash needs to come and the like. And then, kind of with that, helping these individual farm shareholders kind of craft their investment strategy of, different financing pieces and the like specifically with their farm. And then we also do a lot of capital project planning. So, new farms that come up from a construction standpoint, having the individual construction budgets with those farms, but then also, maybe some smaller scales, some upgrade projects or some renovation pieces, farm makeovers and the like, doing capital project planning there as well. So understanding the scope of the project and then, utilizing FBS, the individual detail, to plan those out. So we utilized cost centers and the divisions very frequently in the capital project piece of FBS, kind of as we plan those different projects and the like. And then kind of on the other end of things, we do tax prep and tax planning for the individual farms, and like I say, do some planning work with some of our farm shareholders on the tax side of things. And then some of the pieces that we're doing on specifically the production side of things is some metric reporting and data analytics with our individual farms, and then having certain budgets and variance analysis, using some of the data to kind of say, all right, how do we make our farms as efficient and effective as possible, to say, all right, we want to get the most pigs out the door, the most production we can at the cheapest, some of the cheapest and cost-effective ways as well. So, like I say, have full accounting processes within our accounting group, and then utilize FBS for those specifically within our production side of things. So, a little more details kind of by the numbers into our accounting team. Today we've got 14 accountants. We do financials for 47 operating entities. That covers 78 bank accounts, and we've got 150 investors in our system, and that equates to about 850,000 accounting entries that we're doing in FBS. So we utilize FBS quite a bit, like I mentioned earlier, and you'll see that down there on the screen that we had a prior staffing kind of rule of thumb of one accountant to every 9,000 sows. And if you remember from earlier, I said, all right, we've got 180,000 sows, and I'm showing you here that we've only got 14 accountants. So if our rule of thumb was correct, that would say we're either severely understaffed at having only 14 accountants, or we've been able to put some things in place to really streamline some of our accounting operations and make them as efficient as possible. So kind of with that, I'll tell you some of the pieces that we're using on our end to utilize FBS to its full abilities. How are we streamlining things on our end, and how are we utilizing FBS efficiently to make sure that our operations are as lean as possible. So some of the first things that we do and that we've found really streamline some of our day-to-day accounting process is utilizing FBS's smart feeder feature. So that's taken some of the feed invoices and some of the feed mill data, and instead of hand entering those into the system, uploading those directly into FBS. And sometimes it's building different templates on our end, but most of the time it's working with those individual feed mills and developing some of the import files based on some of the feed mill software. I think that's one thing that is really interesting about FBS, is it is really robust in the different feed mill softwares that it can integrate with and develop some of those import-export files on to import them directly. So we have found the FBS Smart Feeder feature, very, very applicable there as we deal with that. like I said earlier, 180,000 sows, 4.6 million pigs. That's a lot of feed. Feed is the highest cost on any one of our farms, accounting for 30 to 40% depending on the time of the year and the like. So that's a lot of feed invoices, and we have found FBS in its integration feature through the smart feeder piece of FBS to be very helpful as we import a lot of that feed mill data. And that also helps our vendors as well, right? We're able to invoice quicker, get them paid quicker, and the like, get some of the data that we need quicker because we're not having to hand enter those pieces. And at the same time, there's quite a bit of a difference, in some of those different feed mill softwares and how they're invoiced and the like. So the fact that FBS can really integrate with that feed mill data, we have found that to be extremely, extremely helpful. Also on that end, we also utilize the transaction plus import feature to import other invoices from vendors. So, we're taking some export files directly from those vendors and importing them into FBS, and that's really an initiative to help us drive efficiency. Instead of somebody hand entering them, like I say, we're importing them and are able to do, quite a bit of invoices pretty much with just a few mouse clicks as well. But it's also increasing our accuracy, right? So instead of hand entering them and, you may miss a quantity or, a dollar amount or something, it's driving accuracy as well because us importing them, it's coming directly off of those invoice pieces. We don't have to worry about somebody hand entering them incorrectly. But then really where we've seen it help us as well is timeliness. In today's data-driven culture, data-driven society, having some of that real-time data kind of at our fingertips to help the folks at the farm level make decisions and help run their farms more effectively, and at the same time help our investor groups understand their farm and help them kind of craft their strategies as well. So the quicker that we can get transactions into our system and have that data kind of at our fingertips, the better decision makers can use that data in their day-to-day operations, or like I say, even some of our investor groups on some of their investment strategies. So having that data quickly has been something that has been a very big help for those different user groups of that data. And like I say, FBS's import features and the versatility of them can really help with that. So next, I'll kind of walk you through the different specifics of how to import things in FBS. So if you're on your FBS main screen and you go to Input, then there's a spot there that says Import Export Data. So specifically, the example I'll be walking through is on some of the farm invoicing side of things. So kind of under Import Export Data, take Transaction Plus Import Export. And then that'll pop you to the main screen. So you'll see there you have the ability to, on type of file, select a bunch of different types of files. So is it an Excel file, CSV, a bunch of different places. And then under that, where it says file location and file name, that's where we then select our individual files to import. And on our end, what we found is, we might have one single import file that we'll kind of reuse over and over again. So then we're, not saving a bunch of different import files out there. We have the individual templates that we have saved, but, finding the actual import files with us importing so many different things, mentioned, a bunch of different farm entities that we're doing financial statements for. So we typically save kind of one file and then kind of override it. And that helps with consistency to make sure that, all right, some of the columns are saved in the right places and the like. And then, we're not having to go out and search for a bunch of different pieces. So if you click on that Setup Import Column field, that'll take you to the next screen that we have up there on the presentation. So this is kind of where you map the individual fields in your import file into Excel or into FBS. So in this example, we're taking an Excel file. So you'll see that column where it says Excel column. And then, you got the different fields in FBS. So the date field there, we've got a 7 in the Excel column piece. That is telling us that, all right, in the 7th column of our Excel file, that is what we're going to import into date in FBS. And so, just go down and select each one of those columns from your Excel file that'll map directly into FBS. And in this example, we're using Excel. You also see there's a comma delimited column, and then some ASCII columns as well. So like I say, FBS is versatile of the different types of files that you can import into its system. So on the next screen, we've got an example of our invoice. So, in this particular case, taking an invoice for some vet meds and some supplies that is, several pages long and incorporates, quantities and amounts, and some of the individual ship to data. You'll see we've got a location of that farm. That'll tie to a cost center in FBS. So a bunch of different fields. We're taking all of that export data of those invoices and importing it into FBS. So next screen there, I've got an example of our Excel template. So what we're doing is we're taking an export of our vendor invoices and then dropping that into an Excel file, and then we've got different macros on there that go and transform the export from our vendor into a format that we can use it in FBS. So in some cases, it's making certain calculations that's going from invoice to import. In some cases, it's just reordering columns. It's kind of tailored to each individual invoice and each individual data point that we might want. And like I say, it's pretty different for each vendor of some of the things that we're looking at, but the overall goal is the same. How do we import it with all of the data that we need as accurately and quickly as possible? And so kind of with that in FBS, with that in our Excel file, we're developing different macros to transform that data. So macro within Excel is just kind of doing, same simple tasks. And then we've got some different checkpoints there along the way. So you'll see up on the screen, we've got a spot where, okay, it is taking and doing a comparison of the dollar amount and the quantity on 3 different pieces. So it's taken, all right, what was the initial vendor data, and comparing that to, all right, our different formulas where it's transforming that data, and then doing a checkpoint to the import as well. And all 3 of those data points should tie. And then our import file is taking kind of all of our transform formulas and pasting it as values that we then can import into FBS. And so for us, the checkpoints there along the way of comparing those different values and having Excel automatically do that has been very helpful for us to make sure that, the transformation process from export from the vendor files into FBS, we minimize any chance of errors there. And so on this next screen, it shows you kind of the export of everything once it's transformed, and then that goes directly into FBS. And so with us, it's working with those different vendors and asking them, hey, can we get some of our invoices in an Excel format, or kind of telling them specifically what we need. And we've had really good luck with that. Our vendors on their side of things understand that accounting has a need to get more streamlined and more efficient. And most of our vendors have been extremely helpful with that. But also at the same time, it's of their benefit to help us with that, because the quicker that we can get them imported, it means the quicker that they can get paid because it's in our system faster. So it's a very symbiotic relationship to have some of these import pieces. But it's also not just for payables. I think that a lot of companies will find that payables are what are going to come to mind right at first, but you can also do it for revenue items. So, just a couple quick examples on our end. We're doing trailer washes and importing them from a revenue standpoint. So taking some of the truck wash schedules that we would have, and then, calculating some invoicing and revenue points from those different schedules and importing those AR invoices directly in FBS. Kind of the same thing. We're taking some, data from our bore studs and the software from the bore stud end on some of the doses. And then we've got an Excel file that says, okay, if it's this type of dose and here's the amount and here's where it's shipped to, we're doing an Excel file that calculates all of that very, very quickly and imports it directly into FBS just with a few button pushes. Also taken, we've got a couple farms that have some service revenue. So, some farms might do some, load outs or some maintenance activity for different, contract growers, and we're taking some different timesheet data or some input data from some of the things that they were doing on the farm and turning that into an import file that attaches a revenue to some of the hours that they work. So it's for payables, but can also be helpful on revenue items. We've also seen the ability to be able to do it for journal entries, importing a depreciation schedule, importing some calculated pieces from calculating prepaids of what needs to then be moved to an expense from a journal entry standpoint. And you can build an Excel file and an Excel template, depending on where your data source comes from, that can transform all of that. And like I say, FBS is so versatile of some of the things that it can import. So it just sometimes takes some little out of the box thinking of, all right, what are the pieces that we're doing repetitively and over again, and then building certain files to be able to import those into Excel. And then on the flip side of things, with some of our data needs that we have with some of our farms, we have found FBS to be extremely helpful on data analysis and exporting data as well. The versatility of a user-defined report in Excel, we have seen, is extremely helpful for us. From the ability to be able to search across all of our different entities, not just run reports in each farm. We can run it across all of our entities within FBS, and search on the different fields of vendor and description, or looking even for just individual items from a single invoice. That's extremely helpful from a user-defined report. And then it's taken some of that data and exporting it and reporting across farms, like I mentioned earlier. That's where we're getting some of our benchmarking. So looking at things from a cost per pig and a cost per sow comparison to help some of our farm employees, understand areas where they can be more efficient from a cost standpoint. But then it's also taken some of that data and developing some, quote unquote real-time KPIs, and some of those things we're looking at, pretty much on an every week basis on some of the feed usage type pieces, and some of the labor cost standpoint, or looking at repairs and project tracking or semen usage and the cost of semen discard. So most of that is possible because, all right, we can import the data very quickly, but then at the same time, we can look at different reports across farms and develop some of those quick KPIs that, we can get in the hands of decision makers very, very quickly. But then what's also nice about some of the export pieces is the ability to drill down in the individual transactions. So if we've got a particular KPI or a metric that is out of variance, we can drill down in, look at the individual transaction areas, pinpoint some of those drivers, and then help identify some areas of opportunity that we can help improve some of those KPIs and improve them quickly. So we're also taking some of the export files and populating some of our construction budgets. So mentioned earlier that we do capital project tracking and capital project budgeting. So within FBS, we've got over 100 unique division center codes for different budget areas. So sometimes that's a particular location, or sometimes it's a particular type of asset or things like that within the farm itself. So then specifically on the construction end, we're taking some of those export files and tying them to approved POs, and then developing budget and variance tracking, so we can really see at any particular time where we're at within some of the budget pieces from where we said that we would be. And then also taking some of the exports from FBS into some of our data analysis tools. And sometimes it's, simple Excel templates where we're doing cost comparisons, or, full KPI reporting packages that we're pushing out to our farm employees or to some investor groups and things like that. And like I say, that's the really good thing about the versatility of an FBS user-defined report, is we can, really develop some, specific reporting mechanisms off kind of the same export file. So it's, same data source, but we're able to develop and use the versatility of that data in a lot of different pieces. And then, utilizing some of the higher level data analysis software pieces, some Power BI standpoint and Power BI reports, but then also able to do some real-time collaboration with some of that data. So it's uploading them into SharePoint files or Microsoft Teams to say, all right, how do we get everybody on the same page very, very quickly. So some things to consider kind of as you look at FBS and think of ways that you can kind of streamline your operations. If you think there's a faster way to do things, there probably is. And for us, it was just kind of taking a step back and thinking, okay, what are some of the repetitive things that we're doing? And then how can we build certain templates, either in Excel or, work with some of these vendors on the feed end to develop things that we can import or export quickly. And in some cases, it's you need a knowledge of Excel. You might Google it or YouTube it to come up with the different things of, I want to do X. Is there a way to do X? And then, searching for it out there, because like I say, if you think there's a faster way, there probably is. And at the same time, you're not going to be the first person to have thought to do that. And, there's a lot of knowledge base out there you can pull off of. With our particular group, we also hold lunch and learns in the past every once in a while, where we've went and taught our employees different Excel functions and things like that to help them kind of develop their Excel skill sets. And then some of the specific Excel skills that we found to be very, very helpful, XLOOKUP. It's some of you may have been familiar with VLOOKUP in Excel. XLOOKUP is kind of a souped up version of a VLOOKUP, and it's a lot more versatile, allows you to look in different columns and, get kind of customized, return features of the particular formulas. We also utilize things like if statements and indexing to kind of summarize some of the pieces of data. On the data analysis pieces, simple pivot tables that we can build in Excel to summarize some of the data. And then from the streamlining standpoint, macros and VBA. So, giving some of our employees some, quick crash courses on macros and kind of what they do. And that can really help you with some of those repetitive tasks over and over again that can kind of help transform some of that data. And we use that quite frequently to transform some of our data from the individual import files into a format that it can be then put in directly into FBS. But then one thing to consider is, okay, can an FBS macro do the exact same thing? So if you have items that you're purchasing that rarely changes, you can set up an Excel macro, and you can do that right off the AP invoice screen. So you'll see there, I've got an example up there from some lab invoices. So let's say, each lab invoice has a diagnostic report, some freight attached to it, and then the different types of processing that's being done. If those particular items stay the exact same, and maybe the only thing that changes is the quantity and the dollar amount, you can save that as a macro. So you'll see up in the corner where it says save entry as macro, you can check that box and then save that macro. And so then each time you go in to that particular vendor, you can select that macro, and boom, it's going to pop up those different fields with the different accounts and the different centers that you have and divisions that you have tied in there. And then, all you have to change is the dollar amount and the quantity. So that's something to kind of take a step back and think. In our case, we're importing, a bunch of different invoices. In some cases, each invoice might have hundreds of different lines if it's a monthly statement and the like, and that's where some of the Excel files are more helpful. But if you've got something where some of the items purchased rarely change and it's just the dollar amount and the quantity, an FBS macro can do about the same thing as an import can. And then overall, kind of how has some of these efficiencies helped us with our particular team in our particular operation? So first thing is it's reduced errors. We're cutting down on the data entry piece and letting the files put in the quantities and the amounts and all those pieces, and so then it's kind of automatic. We don't have the concern of folks entering things wrong, because the fact is, I mentioned earlier, when we have 850,000 accounting transactions, if we were hand entering every one of those, we're going to have some errors. I mean, that's just the law of big numbers, right? You're going to have some errors when you're dealing with that amount of data. So first and foremost, it's really helped us reduce some errors on that end by importing things. It's also helped us have faster cycle times. It's a better relationship with vendors because we're able to get their data more quickly, and then we're also able to get them paid more quickly because of that. It's also allowed us to have more accurate cash flow forecasting because we're able to take some of that data and get it in very, very quickly, and then we can kind of analyze some of those things kind of in real time. So very helpful on that end from a cash flow piece. It's also helped us have good real-time data for KPIs. So we've been able to kick out some of those reports in real time for some of that data as quickly as we can, and work with those different user groups of the financial statements, kind of develop strategies based on those KPIs. But we've also seen better staff engagement and development. We've taken some of those folks that, might normally be doing some data entry type pieces and, really kind of developed them into accountants, understanding the finance side of the business. How are we using some of the finance data and some of the metrics that we have out of the accounting system to make decisions? And, that's going to help us better, in the long term overall when we're able to better develop our staff in that regard. And it's also helped us with ad hoc metrics and analysis projects. So, we've got our standard KPIs and pieces like that, but, on occasion we've got, different requests for data or different analytical projects. And, the versatility of FBS and how we can export some of that data has been really helpful for some of those pieces that we've got to do on the fly, so to speak. And so kind of what's next with, next generation FBS and MASA. Here are some of our things that we're kind of hopeful for with MASA and kind of as it comes to fruition. So, the ability to integrate MASA with other software systems. That is where we are really going to see a big advantage in MASA, and saying, all right, we've got our accounting system, but we utilize all sorts of different systems within, the building and those different divisions that we have within our company. How can we integrate MASA with those other software systems, to get even more souped up data from that end? And some of the pieces that we're looking at from a software integration standpoint is integrating feed ordering and budgeting directly with the accounting system. So, we've got a separate system where farms order their feed. How can we integrate some of that and kind of develop budgets and metrics and variance in real time with some of those pieces? It's also looking at some of our payroll software. So how do we take some of the data out of payroll and tie that to a cost within FBS and track certain things overall from a labor end? After feed, labor is our next biggest cost from that, and kind of working our way down. You'll see I've got repair and maintenance work up there as well. How can we take different work tickets and work orders out of our maintenance system and tie that to an individual invoice so we can make better decisions on things like parts of do you replace a particular piece of equipment or continue to repair it, or to try to understand, all right, or is a particular farm seeing repairs in certain areas based on their work tickets that other farms aren't, and then what's the cost of that extra work? And having seamless integrations with our accounting system and our work order ticketing system, those can really give good insights there. And then linking it also to some of our production software pieces as well is obviously very helpful in a system like ours that is so focused on production. And then also, we'd love to see certain things on the bank reconciliation end, and how do we integrate MASA and FBS with our bank accounts. So, mentioned have quite a few different bank accounts with all the farms being separate legal entities. Are there different things that we can do integrating our bank's systems with our accounting system? We're also looking forward to the ability to import across farms. So today, have the ability to just import in the particular farm that you're in within FBS. Our hope is that MASA will have the ability to import across all of our farms. That will really streamline our pieces even further. And then we're also continuing to look to develop more real-time monitoring and projections. Like I say, in today's data-driven society, the faster some of those pieces can be developed, the better to get them in the hands of decision makers more quickly. And then lastly, our hope is that kind of with all of this integration, we can tie KPIs to a dollar amount to make them metrics mean something. Our farm managers, our production team, and then our farm owners and investors, they've got all sorts of different things that they can, do in a day, and we've got oodles of KPIs that we're throwing at them. how do we really manage by exception? If we can take some of all of those KPIs, and integrate all those different software systems and tie them to a specific dollar value and make some of those metrics mean something, then we can help them manage by exception and really help them focus on, all right, here might be the 20 or 30 areas that we look at, but here are the 3 that matter the most. And what's going to have the most bang for your buck, if you will. So if you've only got time to focus on a couple things, what do you drill down into? And that's something that we're really hopeful with our with new FBS and MASA, and then kind of tying it to all those different systems from an integration standpoint. So we're very much looking forward to MASA and what it has in store, and it can really help take our operations from a finance standpoint, and then just an overall production operation standpoint as well, to the next level. So we're very much looking forward to MASA. And thank you all very, very much for having me. Like I say, we are exclusive users of FBS on our production accounting side of things. And hopefully this gives you kind of a look at the way that we're able to utilize FBS for efficiency and effectiveness within our day-to-day operations. So if any of you have any questions, definitely reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you very much.